I loved nearly all of my college professors. I thought they were all brilliant and generally were very good at their jobs. But one was very memorable for a handful of reasons. Not only was he remarkably short, but he also was very funny. He was extremely candid. And at one point, he made one of the most embarrassing oopsies I've ever heard in a class. So I figured I would tell you this story in a storytime video. This is a series I do where I just tell you fun little stories that you might find interesting. Basically, this was a finance professor. It was finance, maybe 411 or something like that. It was like a senior finance class for my bachelor's degree. And this guy was brilliant. I mean, he was a multi-PhD individual. He worked with all sorts of huge companies that would hire him to go into their books and figure out ways to maximize revenues and things. He was a brilliant guy. But he was very, very funny. At one point early in the school year, he had come into class one day and he would do this thing where he would kind of ask the class broad questions about current events just to see who was paying attention to what. Because his philosophy was like, if you want to make money, you need to understand money. And one of the ways you understand money is by understanding what's going on in the world of money. So for him, he would come in and he'd ask, so who's aware of what just happened with the Fed funds rate? And he'd wait until somebody answered. Or he'd go in and say, what just happened with the stock split for Amazon? And then he just wanted the student to explain it. That's all he was looking for. One day he asked a question and I answered. And I don't recall what the question was, but it was something pretty mundane. I had read a Bloomberg article on it. I was a college student who paid for my own subscription to Bloomberg. I was that much of a try-hard. And I remember he was like, okay, and what was your source for this after I explained the answer? And I said, Bloomberg. And he's like, you have Bloomberg? Because Bloomberg can be pretty expensive. And I'm like, yep. I figured it was probably worth it. I'd get my money's worth out of it. And he's like, you sure will. You pay. He's like, really? You play for Bloomberg? You pay for it? I was like, yep, sure do. It's like, okay. He says, Luke, tell me, is your mom alive? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, okay. So your mom's alive. Is she up around this time? Like, yeah. It was the first class of the day. It was like 8 a.m. or something. He was like, yeah, she's definitely up. I'm like, where is he going with this? He's asking me if my mom's alive and if she's awake right now. And he's like, okay, would you be able to call her on your phone there? And I'm sitting in a class with like 150 other students. And he just asked me to call my mom. I'm like, sure. I couldn't think of an excuse fast enough not to. So I was like, okay, I got the answer right. I said I was paying for Bloomberg or whatever. And then he's like, call your mom. I'm like, okay. So I dial her and she picks up and she goes, hey, Lukey, what's up? And then he just kind of marches over. The teacher marches over and just takes the phone. He's just like, puts it on speaker. And he's like, hey, Mrs. Stevens, I just wanted to let you know, bear in mind, just so you can picture this guy, he looks like a probably 5'2" Dave Ramsey. Okay. He's like, I just want you to know that your son, Luke, he just answered a question in his finance class with me, Professor blah, blah, blah. And it was very impressive what he just did. And you should be very proud of him. Okay. And my mom was like, okay, wonderful. Like my mom's so like chipper and just like, oh, yay. She's very bubbly on the phone. And he's like, yeah, you should be very proud. And, he's doing good work. She's like, okay, thank you. And he's like, okay. And then he hangs up. And then he just like carries on with the rest of the class. Like nothing happened. Just continuing on. And the class, of course, is dying of laughter. They thought it was so funny. And it was just a good time. So this would happen occasionally. Like maybe once every few weeks, a student would give a particularly interesting answer, or he'd ask a really niche question and somebody would answer it. And then they would get the opportunity to have the teacher tell their mom how good they were doing. And one time, a girl answers a question and he's like, yeah, is your mom still alive? Yep. She available for a phone call? Yep. And so they call her and he hypes her up and everybody finds it really, really funny. Well, one day he did this to a young man who answered a question correctly. And he asked him, is your mom still alive? He's like, yes, sir. And you could tell this kid was super uncomfortable with it. He was like, I don't want you to call my mom. You don't want to call my mom, please. You could just see it on his face. This kid was like, dear God, don't do it. But the teacher was insistent. He's like, is your mom awake right about now? He's like, yeah, but this isn't really the kind of thing that she would find fun. And he cuts him off. He's like, oh, why don't you call her on your phone right now? He's like, I really don't think that she will react well to this. I just don't think it's a good idea. He's like, oh, come on. She's not going to react well to me telling her son is a genius. Come on, let's do it. Let's do it. Very pushy. And finally, after like a very uncomfortable 30 to 45 seconds that felt like an hour and a half of the teacher kind of pushing him to call his mom, he begrudgingly goes and dials the phone, puts it on speaker, and you can just see the kid. He like covers his eyes and holds it up to the teacher. He's just so uncomfortable. And the kid's mom answers. And immediately, I don't know if this kid had just like stolen her car or what, but she picks up the phone and says, what? The room was dead silent. Nobody knew what to say. And the teacher grabs the phone, does his spiel. So I just want to let you know that Brandon here just did a great job answering this question in my class, and you should be very proud of him. And just wanted to tell you that. And a little bit of silence. And then she just starts unloading on the professor. I can't believe that you would call me first thing in the morning. This is so irresponsible. How am I supposed to know you're even a teacher? You're probably one of his friends pranking me. And if you are a professor, this is a ridiculous waste of time. We are paying so much money for him to go to school there, and you are wasting it with something stupid like this. Just going off and off and off. And you can tell the professor gets really, really uncomfortable. He's just kind of taken aback. It's like, I did not expect it to go that way. And at one point, she just kind of stopped talking. And he's like, all right, well, you have a good day, ma'am. And then he hangs it up. And then handed the phone back. I was just like, I'm so sorry. And then went back and taught the class. It was very, very, very uncomfortable. I don't think he had done that with that response before, and so it was very new to him as well. He was used to people just being like, oh, like my mom, like, oh, it's so silly, hee, whatever. I don't think he had gotten that response. At one point, I remember early in the semester, shortly after he had done it to me, there was a girl that answered, and he asked, is your mom still alive? And she said, nope. But she said it in like a very kind of, no, she passed away. In a, nope, that kind of like smirky face. So maybe her mom had passed away. I don't know. Or maybe she knew her mom would react the same way, and so she just said that her mom was dead. I don't know. Seems like bad juju, but even that, like, I think he would just be like, oh, my condolences, and then he'd move on. But this time it was different. And I don't think for the rest of the semester, if I recall correct, I don't think he ever tried it again with anybody else. And who knows, maybe for like a year or two after that, he didn't bother doing that little stunt because it was so terribly uncomfortable. I don't know if his mom, the kid's mom, ever reached out or like sent an email or called or filed a complaint against him. I don't even know what the complaint would be. Yeah, the professor called me to tell me my son was doing a great job. Like, okay, lady, calm down. I don't know what had her up in a tizzy, but man, was it uncomfortable. And it was one of my fondest memories from my time in that class. It was just outrageous and silly. I still love that professor. He's a weird guy. But he is brilliant. And even though he makes some awkward mistakes sometimes, I think in general his class was really, really informative. So that's my story of the time my college professor's prank totally backfired in a really, really uncomfortable way. Hopefully you found it relatively interesting as a story. Let me know if you want to hear more of these story times in the future down in the comment section below, and like the video if you enjoyed it. Much love. I'll see you in the next stream or clip or video, whatever comes first. Much love. Hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.